has tuned in to this channel. I truly appreciate you. And if you're new here and you enjoy whispered true crime, please consider subscribing to the channel. I post 2 times a week, on Monday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I recommend using headphones if you would like to hear the gentle mic brushing. Now let's get right to tonight's case. Tonight we are traveling to England. Shout out to all my friends in England. Tonight's case is referred to as the Twilight Killers, and you will find out why later on. So this case occurred in the year 2016, and it is the case of Kim Edwards and Lucas Markham. So let's start with some background on Kim Edwards. She was born around the year 2002. She would be 14 at the time that the case takes place, as was Lucas. Okay, so she was born in England, and she was raised by her mother, whose name was Elizabeth, in a small town called Spalding, Lincolnshire. Elizabeth worked as what they call a dinner lady at a school. Now, I looked it up, and I think it's the same as what we call in the US a lunch lady, like someone who works in the cafeteria at school. Correct me if I'm wrong. She also volunteered at a charity shop and with the church's children's choir and theater. When Kim was a very, very young child, she watched her mother suffer domestic abuse at the hands of her father, Peter Edwards. Peter worked as a welder, and he was said to be an abusive man who was addicted to drugs. He abandoned the family when Kim was only 2. Now, Kim also has a sister named Katie, a younger sister who was almost 2 years younger than her. And she has an older half-sister whose name is Mary. And by the time that this case takes place, Mary was 26, married and living with her husband and child in a town called Derby. Kim's mother had a partner named Graham Greene, who she had started dating in 2015. He would go with her to church every Sunday. They were planning on marrying, according to Graham. And in the Christmas of 2015, they had bought a puppy together, and they named it Baby, or BB, B-E-B-E. And he said of her, quote, "She was my rock and I was her grumpy Graham," end quote. Kim and her mother Elizabeth never got along. They had a kind of toxic relationship, to say the least. When Kim was 6, her mother punched her in the face during an argument over a broken TV, and her mother, Elizabeth, recognized how terrible it was what she had done to her daughter, so she immediately called social services to report herself. So Kim and Katie were put into foster But Kim never ever got over it. And she also believed that her mother favored Katie. Of course, her mother denied that that was true, but that was a major, major issue for Kim, feeling like she was, on the outside, and her mother and Katie were almost like best friends, Kim first became interested in a boy named Lucas Markham in September of 2013, so I imagine she was only about 11 then, when she first saw him in school throwing a chair in English class. Now, they met more properly during an IT lesson in the spring of 2015. So when she first, noticed him throw the chair, she just thought to herself, oh, he looks good to me. I guess she liked the bad boy type. But in the spring of 2015, they became more formally acquainted. And once he realized that she had a crush on him, he asked her out on Facebook, and she said yes. Now, up to that point, Kim was a popular girl. Friends described her as funny and happy-go-lucky, but Lucas, on the other hand, was seen as a loner and a bully, and someone who struggled to fit in with the other kids. But when Kim started dating Lucas, she felt she had found her soulmate. They bonded tremendously over family dysfunction. They both had very dysfunctional families. And once they got together, they took on an attitude of it's us against the world. Now let me tell you a little more about Lucas. So as I said before, he was the same age as Kim. He lived on the same street and they went to the same school. His mother had sadly passed away from leukemia when he was only 4, and his father was a violent alcoholic, and Lucas had moved between foster homes, rarely seeing his father for years, until at some point Lucas's aunt took over custody of him, and that's when he moved onto the street where Kim lives. So he turned out to be quite a handful for his aunt. He was always getting in trouble. Now, when Kim's mother, Elizabeth, saw how serious their relationship was becoming, she was not happy. She saw him as a really bad influence. And at some point, she banned Lucas from coming to their house at all, which really, really angered Kim, as you can imagine. And the two of them wound up running away from home. They were missing for 5 days until they were finally found, living in a tent in the forest. Now, Kim's half-sister, the adult one, she had doubts about the relationship as well, and she tried to talk to Kim about it, but she could never get through to her. Mary said, quote, "I thought this pair are a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. I knew straight away that there was something I did not like about him. I knew he was trouble. I just didn't realize he would be this extent of trouble." End quote. Kim's mother, Elizabeth, often called Mary, talking about how worried she was about Kim because she had become withdrawn from family and friends since she started dating Lucas. Lucas's house and went back home, she found that her mother had bagged up most of her possessions and even given some of her possessions to her younger sister, Katie. She was fuming. Kim would later explain that her mother's actions left her feeling like she, quote, did not belong to the family anymore, end quote. The next day, Lucas joked to Kim that they should kill her mother, and she knew he was joking. She would later admit that he was joking, but she said yes, we should do that, and she was serious, and he knew she was serious. Kim would later say that she, quote, carried on as normal at school. No one knew about the plan, end quote. They started meeting to make up the plan over Happy Meals at McDonald's. And during long walks along the Coronation Channel, they decided that Lucas would kill Elizabeth, and Kim would kill her sister Katie, who was now 13. They decided that they should stab their voice boxes right away so they couldn't scream, and that the day after they would kill Katie and Elizabeth, they would take their own lives. So, their first attempt failed. That was April 11th, 2016. Lucas went along with the plan. He was supposed to walk over to her house, and she was supposed to let him in through a window, but she was asleep. Okay, so that didn't happen. Now, on April 13th, this day, she let him in through the window. He brought with him a bag with some knives, like kitchen knives. He took one of the knives and he went into Elizabeth's bedroom. She was 49 at this time. She was asleep. And he started stabbing her in the neck and smothering her with a pillow. Now, Kim heard, yelling and stuff, and she went in to check on Lucas. That's what she would later say. And supposedly it was so dark in there that a hand reached out for her, and she grabbed it because she thought it was Lucas's hand. But it was her mother's hand. Her mother was reaching out to her to save her. But as soon as she realized whose hand it was, she immediately threw it down. So once Lucas had killed poor Elizabeth, he came out of the room, and Kim said she wasn't going to be able to kill Katie herself. So Lucas said he would do it. And he went ahead in there. She had the same bedroom as Kim. They shared a bedroom. And he did the same to her. Stabbed her in the neck and smothered her with a pillow. After that, the two of them took a bath together to wash off the blood. And Kim would later explain to police that it was so that their dog didn't smell the blood. That was why they needed to take a bath, and this was part of the plan. Then Lucas went to her bedroom where poor Katie laid dead, and he took the other mattress out of there and brought it downstairs and put it in front of the TV. And Kim put on her Minion pajamas. They went downstairs and just sitting calmly, watching Twilight, and they said, "Where is your family?" And Kim said, "You better go look upstairs." Like, she was just very calm. She's just like, "Go have a look upstairs." So up they went to find the gruesome, bloody scene. And of course, the two were arrested for suspected double murder. And they were brought down to the police station for separate questioning. And like I said, they were just very calm, like, okay, here we go. They were both very respectful to the police. They were pretty honest, just went right ahead and explained what happened. Kim told the police that she was happy that Lucas had killed her family because, quote, "My mom doesn't have to deal with me being suicidal, and she doesn't have to wake up worrying every morning and see if I'm still alive, and my sister doesn't have to go through all the heartbreak and emotions and stuff," end quote. So her explanation is that, they killed Katie because it would be better off for Katie to be dead than to be upset over the fact that her mother was killed. That's what Kim said, but Lucas, on the other hand, would explain that they killed her so she couldn't go to the police. Neither one of them showed any remorse, and they didn't try to blame it on the other either. Some people compared them to Bonnie and Clyde, but it seems, since they were watching Twilight, it seems that they saw themselves like Edward and Bella, a schoolgirl who falls in love with a man forced to be a monster. Teenagers sharing dark secrets, whose families disapprove of their love. In October of 2016, Lucas pled guilty to 2 counts of murder, but Kim only admitted to manslaughter, not murder, suggesting that mental illness had diminished her responsibility for the crimes. The psychiatrist reported that a, quote, "series of stressful events caused her to suffer from an adjustment disorder impairing her rational judgment." Psychiatrist Dr. Joseph, for the prosecution, blamed the toxic relationship between Kim and Lucas. He said that Kim doesn't have a recognized mental disorder, but had been struggling to feel a part of the family. He said, quote, "In that triangle, she felt very much left out. She felt that her mother was very much more attached to her younger sister," end quote. He said that the family dynamics made her unhappy and jealous, and that the only solution that she saw was to kill them. He said that she had told him, quote, "I was getting rid of the only problem I could see. I thought it would have been better for my sister to die, too. I was not killing my sister out of anger, and I miss her, but I was excited about killing my mother, and I was looking forward to it. We felt laid back about what had happened. Neither of us felt that bad about it," end quote. So the jury concluded that Kim had formed intent to kill, and they unanimously found her guilty of 2 counts of murder after only 30 minutes of deliberation. Now, in England, the age of criminal responsibility is very low. It's only 10. Kim and Lucas were already 14 by the time they committed these murders. So they were both sentenced to, quote, "indefinite detention at Her First of all, rest in peace to Katie and Elizabeth. I'm sorry I didn't have a lot of information about Katie. I just couldn't find it. But nonetheless, I cannot imagine the amount of pain, shock, and horror that both of them went through during the attack. What an absolutely awful way to go. And my heart goes out to their friends and family. Now, a popular question regarding this case is who was the leader? Not that either of them is even remotely innocent, okay? They're both guilty, 100%. But just looking at it, who was the person who was in charge here? Now, obviously, Lucas did the physical murder, okay? And he's the one who began the idea with his joke. But it was a joke, and they both knew that in the beginning. Now, I watched a documentary, and there were two professors in the documentary, and they disagreed with each other. One said that Kim was the leader, and the other said that Lucas was the leader. What do you think? Now, of course, there had to be both of them for this to ever happen, right? So it was kind of like, if they hadn't found each other, this never would have happened, probably. It's almost like it took someone like Lucas to bring out this side of Kim, but yet she had this side within her, like he did not create it. And in my opinion, everyone can have their own opinion, and that's good. Okay, that's great. Feel free to share a different opinion from mine. I just feel like Katie was the leader. He was basically doing it for her. I know he didn't really have much of a problem about doing it for her, but he was doing it for her, not really so much for himself. That's why I really see it as her being the one in charge. And you know, it really makes me wonder, how is it in this small little town in England, on the same street and in the same grade, at the same school, there were two people who were both capable of murder. Looking back, I'd like to believe that in my entire school there wasn't even one person capable of murder, yet alone two, and in the same grade. I mean, I might be naive, but still, I'm just really surprised how people like this tend to find each other. Two people who were both so miserable, and yet they were different on the outside, but on the inside they were very similar. Now, we know that their sentence is only 17 and a half years, so 14 plus 17 is 31, so 31 and a half would be about the age when they would get out. Do we think that that seeing